Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I am Tanvi Taneja, and for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Good afternoon, Ollie.
Hello, Tanvi. It's 12:30 p.m. in London, 1:30 across Central Europe. Lots coming up, including the latest from Ukraine and from North Caledonia, and the nonagenarian Italian sprinter. First, the headlines.
Chinese President Xi Jinping meets Russian President Vladimir Putin in Beijing to strengthen their strategic partnership. Both leaders hit out at the US for threatening their countries. France deploys troops to New Caledonia to restore calm, bans TikTok platform as emergency imposed in the country for 12 days. And India to host the Bharat Parv at the Cannes Film Festival for the first time. The festival will see the release of Save the Date for the first World Audiovisual and Entertainment Summit to be hosted alongside the 55th International Film Festival of India, IFFI. First news from Asia. Chinese President Xi Jinping met Russian President Vladimir Putin in Beijing on Thursday as part of Putin's two-day visit to China. The meeting will include talks on Ukraine, Asia, energy and trade. Both leaders signed and issued a joint statement on deepening China and Russia's comprehensive strategic partnership. They also agreed to deepen their strategic partnership and slammed the United States for threatening their countries. They will have more talks over dinner where they will celebrate 75 years since the Soviet Union recognized the People's Republic of China. In an earlier discussion on Thursday, Xi expressed commitment to collaborate with Putin to enhance the vitality of their nations, affirming China's steadfast partnership with Russia.
China will always be a good neighbor, good friend of mutual trust with Russia, continue to consolidate the friendship between the two nations, work together to achieve the development and rejuvenation of our respective countries, and to uphold equity and justice in the world.
Choosing China for his inaugural foreign visit since Putin's new 6-year term as Russian president, he highlighted the strong foundation of practical cooperation between Moscow and Beijing.
Moscow and Beijing indeed have a great background of practical cooperation. In 2023, the bilateral trade turnover has grown by almost a quarter and reached a great figure of $227 billion. China is our key partner in trade and commerce.
So, DD India's Laura Westbrook is tracking Putin's visit to China. She sent us this report from Hong Kong.
Russia's President Vladimir Putin received a warm welcome in China, and that close relationship between the two leaders was on full display. They held one-on-one talks as well as group talks, with Russia bringing a trade delegation as well as its foreign and defense ministers. The two sides signed documents deepening cooperation, with agreement on trade to nuclear and energy cooperation to food supplies. Chinese President Xi Jinping said that China was ready to be a good friend, partner and neighbor to Russia. He also said that when it comes to trade, that cooperation would be the driving force. Russian President Vladimir Putin, meanwhile, said that negotiations had been warm and businesslike, and he also confirmed that they had discussed the war in Ukraine. He said that both sides agreed that a political settlement was needed, and he also said that he would be briefing President Xi Jinping about the situation in Ukraine. Now, Beijing has been under increasing pressure from the United States to stop its supplies, particularly of dual-use components that end up on the battlefield. Just before this visit by Putin, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen both pressed China to stop exports that aid Russia's war effort. The US has also sanctioned Chinese firms with links to Russia, and with Russia bringing its state bank governor and other ministers, there has been speculation that the two sides will be looking to circumvent any potential sanctions on Chinese state-owned banks. The US has promised there is potential for further sanctions on Chinese state-owned banks if they found evidence that they were facilitating the trade of these dual-use components in the war in Ukraine. Laura Westbrook in Hong Kong, reporting for DD India.
Now, from the war in Ukraine, let's shift our attention to the Israel-Hamas conflict. As the fighting between Israel and Hamas intensifies in Gaza, 5 Israeli soldiers were killed and several injured in the northern Gaza Strip after being struck by Israeli tank fire. The Israeli military said that there was a tank crossfire of the 202 Battalion. Israeli ground forces re-entered parts of northern Gaza this month to prevent Hamas from regrouping. This came as a barrage of rockets was fired at Israel from Lebanon. Israeli army said that most of the rockets were intercepted. Now, discussions on reaching a ceasefire in Gaza is expected to take the center stage as the Arab League holds a summit in Bahrain on Thursday. Those in attendance at the 22-member grouping's meet include Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamas Al Thani. Qatar, along with Egypt, have been the main mediators between Israel and Hamas. And DD India's Stuart Smith joins us live from Baghdad now for more on this story. Stuart, what are the Arab leaders hoping to agree when it comes to ending the Israel-Hamas conflict?
Well, unusually perhaps, there's a lot of consensus about both the need and the possibility of finding solutions amongst Arab states. Now, often there are divisions between, for example, the so-called pragmatists like Saudi Arabia that want to continue relations with Israel and those that are opposed to doing so, such as those in Syria and Lebanon. But this meeting, with that 143 UN member vote going in favour of creating a state of Palestine, has given new momentum and new hope in the Arab world for an agreement. So what they're proposing, and it's looking likely according to the Deputy Secretary General that this will be agreed, is a ceasefire with a concrete timeline, and a ceasefire that from day one would then immediately remove Hamas as being in charge of the Gaza Strip. It would then be handed over to the Palestinian Authority, perhaps placating Israel and US partners, but at the same time, the next step, they say, would be full recognition of Palestine as a state. Now, Bahrain, as leader of this year's Arab Summit, will be taking those negotiations forwards. And so over the next few months, if this Bahrain declaration is passed, it will be leading that charge. And it hopes that with full backing from all member states at the Arab League, and also with those 143 votes at the UN for full membership for Palestine, that will be enough momentum to start serious progress with Israel and with the United States.
And apart from finding ways to end the Israel-Hamas conflict, what else will the leaders be discussing on Thursday?
Well, there are a host of issues in the Arab world that these leaders again say they're looking to try and link minds on and join up an acceptable conclusion to many of the regional issues. For example, where there are internal conflicts in Libya and Syria, where there is a border dispute between Djibouti and Eritrea in Africa, and also trying to manage the possibility of escalation between Iran and Israel, neither of them in the Arab League, but both countries having major implications for the Arab League members.
Stuart Smith in Baghdad, thank you for those updates. Now, more on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Ukraine's President Zelensky is in Kharkiv today. He has met the military as Russia presses on its offensive in the north of the Kharkiv region. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London. He takes it forward from me here and gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Oli, Zelensky at the moment describing the situation extremely difficult.
He is, Tanvi, and Ukraine says that its forces are fighting Russian troops in the northern districts of Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region at the moment. The Ukrainian army says its troops have hampered Russia's plan of establishing a foothold there and insists the situation, although as you say described as extremely difficult by the president, is under control. Russian forces are trying to take a village located about 30 kilometers north of Kharkiv. The Ukrainian president has traveled there and he's been holding a meeting with the military. And DD India's Dasha Chernyshova sent us this report from Moscow.
Russia is going to press with its operation in Ukraine, and that has been repeatedly stated by the Russian officials. Now we understand that the Russian forces are on the upper footing in all directions on the battlefields, with the Russian president even saying the day before that everything goes according to the plan. The words we haven't heard for a while now. So the understanding at the moment is that there is enough reserves in terms of the manpower, in terms of the military equipment and ammunition, according to Shoigu, to continue with the ongoing operation. We also understand from the Russian authorities that the nomination of Andrei Belousov, a veteran economist, to the position of Russia's Minister of Defense is there to make sure that the military spending in Russia, which has increased double-fold, in order to make sure that Russia achieves its goals of what it says demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. So many analysts are saying that Russia's moves are only the indication that Russia is in this operation for the long haul. But also keep in mind that Moscow portrays the operation as the existential fight between Moscow and the West.
Now, the Kremlin says a planned summit that Switzerland hopes will pave the way for a peace process in Ukraine will be futile without the participation of Russia. The Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, is describing talks as empty scholasticism with no prospect of getting any tangible result. NATO's military committee has been discussing the implementation of defence plans, logistics and air and missile capabilities while the situation in Kharkiv is deteriorating.
Today is the 813th day of what Russia thought would be a three-day war. Ukraine has demonstrated to the world that it has the ability to achieve unprecedented success on the battlefield. There is nothing they cannot do. All they need is our help. Luckily, more help is on the way, and that cannot come a moment too soon. Because time in Ukraine is not measured in days, weeks, or months. It is measured in human lives.
France has deployed troops to New Caledonia's ports and international airport, banned TikTok and imposed a state of emergency. France's Interior Minister says the state expects to control the situation in New Caledonia soon. This after a third night of riots that have killed 4 people and left hundreds injured on the French Pacific island. Schools have been shut and there's been a curfew in the capital. We can go live now to DD India's Ross Cullen, who's joining us from Paris. And Ross, we've just been hearing from the French Prime Minister. What's he been saying?
Yeah, that's right, Ollie. Gabriel Attal has just been speaking after the end of a cabinet meeting. There was also a national security and defence meeting this morning chaired by Emmanuel Macron. Gabriel Attal saying the government has 3 clear objectives for how to deal with the situation in New Caledonia. Number 1, to re-establish order. Number 2, he wants to ensure that daily life can return to normal as quickly as possible. And number 3, he wants to create the conditions for dialogue. We know that Emmanuel Macron was due to have conversations this afternoon via video conference with local leaders in the French overseas territory, but that has been cancelled. The Elysee Palace saying that in fact it was cancelled because local leaders among themselves couldn't agree on dialogue to be had with the French president. But the situation here is so serious that Gabriel Attal has announced that there will be another 1,000 extra service from the police service being sent, not just regular police officers but also the special police forces. These are the ones that we do see regularly in France being deployed when there is civil unrest, when we do have riots, and so they are going to the island as well. They will be boosting the 2,500 extra police who've been sent, soldiers, as you say, at ports and the international airport. The situation, though, does remain very tense, as Gabriel Attal was outlining in his news conference just a short time ago.
Well, Ross, what is the situation on the ground at the moment?
Well, there are still riots and fires going on. We can see smoke rising from different areas across the island. Gabriel Attal saying that it was unacceptable, it was unspeakable, some of the events that were taking place. He said the heaviest sanctions would be reserved for those who have been rioting. We have seen these barricades being putting up across the island for several days now. People bringing pallets, fridges, barrels, often tyres, and then setting alight. And something else, Ollie, that we have now seen over the last 24 hours or so particularly has been the formation of these militias, the formation of these vigilante groups, self-defence groups, trying to protect their neighbourhoods, protect their houses and their loved ones from rioters and looters. People being armed with baseball bats, actually also firearms as well. Local authorities saying there are some 100,000 guns circulating on the island, and so that has been something of concern as well for the government, to see these militia taking actions into their own hands. But the government in Paris certainly worried, because this was about constitutional reform. That's why the protests began earlier in the week. The indigenous Kanak population fear that giving extra voting rights to French residents on the island might dilute the power of their vote. It was protests about that then turned violent and then widened into this civil unrest across the island, which has seen this strong response from the French government and this announcement from the French Prime Minister in the last few minutes of extra troops being sent to the island.
OK, Ross, thank you. That's DD India's Ross Cullen reporting live for us from Paris, and he'll keep us up to date with developments in New Caledonia as we get them. Well, next to a nonagenarian Italian sprinter. A 90-year-old woman from Italy, proving that age is indeed just a number. Emma Maria Matzenga has claimed another world record in her age group. She ran the 200 metres outdoors in just 51.47 seconds. And Tanvi, this nonagenarian, beats the previous record of 53.35 seconds, set by Japan's Emiko Saito back in 2022.
That's brilliant, and as we appreciate Emma's inspiring story, she holds 5 world records, 9 European records and 28 best Italian performances in various categories of master sprinting. Her next commitments include the Italian Championships starting in June, and she has an eye on the World Championships in Sweden next year. Clearly an unsung star of Italian athletics, Emma Maria Matzenga. Thank you, Ollie Barrett, joining us all from London. You're watching DD India Global. Still to come on the show. Campaigning in full swing for the 5th phase of India's general elections. Polling to take place in 49 seats across 6 states and 2 UTs on May 20th. And in the Netherlands, the incoming government led by Geert Wilders' PVV party looking to opt out of the European Union migration rules. We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Another promising story now. More than half of Gen Zs and two-thirds of millennials globally are optimistic about the economic and social situation of India and expect it to improve further. This was revealed in a Deloitte survey. The Deloitte survey revealed millennials are increasingly optimistic about the future economic, financial and social landscape of India compared to global counterparts. Both generations expect the country's economic outlook to improve further in the next 1 year. The survey highlights the optimism shared by both generations towards potential benefits of Generation AI in refining their work practices. Recognizing the need for reskilling, both generations anticipate Gen AI's influence on career decisions. The survey gathers insights from more than 28,800 Gen Z and millennial respondents across 44 countries. Promising indeed. And now we get you the latest on India's elections. So campaigning continues in full swing for the last three phases of India's ongoing elections. Voting for the fifth phase will be held on 20th of May across 49 constituencies in 6 states and 2 union territories. Senior BJP leader and Prime Minister Narendra Modi is campaigning in Uttar Pradesh today. Addressing a public meeting in Lalganj, the Prime Minister lauded the implementation of the Citizenship Amendment Act and accused the opposition parties for spreading lies about the act. The Indian Prime Minister noted that the work towards giving citizenship to those who are victims of partition has already started under the Citizenship Amendment Act. Senior BJP leader and Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also held an election rally, and this was done in Jaunpur today. Senior BJP leader and Union Home Minister Amit Shah also addressed a public rally in Bihar's Sitamarhi today. BJP National President JP Nadda held a roadshow in Bhubaneswar. He will also hold public meetings in Odisha later in the day. And top leaders of opposition parties are also holding rallies across the country to woo the voters. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge addressed a press conference in Odisha today, and he will also attend a public meeting in Phulbani. Congress General Secretary Priyanka Gandhi Vadra held a campaign supporting her brother Rahul Gandhi in Uttar Pradesh's Raebareli. Aam Aadmi Party Supremo and Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal is in Uttar Pradesh's Lucknow, where he held a joint conference with Samajwadi Party Chief Akhilesh Yadav. So staying with India's election coverage, in the fifth phase of India's great democratic elections, Ladakh's lone parliamentary seat goes to polls on 20th of May. It has a unique landscape and rare flora and fauna which attracts tourists in large numbers from home and abroad. Voters want sustainable practices to be the way forward in taking Ladakh's tourism to newer heights. DD India's Gautam Roy reports from Leh.
Ladakh, a land of majestic snowy mountains and awe-inspiring landscapes with rivers, valleys, high mountain passes and unique flora and fauna. Estimates say Ladakh drew around 600,000 tourists last year, but its population is barely half that number. It creates tremendous pressure on Ladakh's scarce resources ranging from water, vegetation, animals, birds, and grasslands. Traffic jams have become commonplace in tourism hubs like Leh and other tourist destinations in Ladakh. Some tourists and establishments hosting them also don't behave responsibly, respecting the environment, which causes concern among Ladakhis.
There should be a responsible tourist. They're throwing garbage everywhere, and then at the same time they're playing with the life of the animal also.
Ladakh has a wide variety of rare animals and birds like the snow leopard and unique vegetation like grasslands and wetlands, which is sensitive to intrusion by tourists. Conservationists have been seeking some form of regulation of entry of tourists in Ladakh.
We, to regulate the number of tourists, would be starting some sort of portal where people can register if they want to visit Ladakh, and there should be a cap to the number of people visiting Ladakh, and that's the only way we can regulate, otherwise it's very difficult.
But there's a flip side to the story as well, where resorts, hotels and restaurants have been built in Ladakh in the sustainable mode, using local materials and techniques which have eco-friendly practices like no single-use plastic and no changing of linen daily. Tourists appreciate the effort and stakeholders also take pride in respecting their surroundings.
I do think it's very sustainable because of the practices that I've seen them, including the mud plaster that they've built. It's rammed earth, which is like literally built from the earth where the soil is, where the property is. Also, they have a lot of these no to plastic and don't change your towels and things like that. So it's nice.
This is the only way, I guess, tourism can go ahead in Ladakh or be it in any part of the world, because we need to really think and take care of this planet.
Ladakh is a rare gem of nature which sits on top of India's map like a crown, and efforts are being made to ensure that it keeps enticing tourists from all over the world.
Be it tourism or development, sustainability is the way forward, particularly for an eco-sensitive zone like Ladakh. Eco-tourism is something that the people here want, an agenda that should be pushed by their chosen representatives when they get to Delhi in election season. With Conference Naveen Kumar Jha, Gautam Roy, Leh, DD India.
And next we bring you all the glitz and glamour from the ongoing 77th edition of the Cannes Film Festival from France. So today, India is hosting a Bharat Parv for the first time at the Cannes Film Festival in France. It will be a networking evening where Indian talent and opportunities will be showcased. The official poster and trailer of the 55th India International Film Festival, IFFI, will also be unveiled at the Bharat Parv. We all know that IFFI is held in Goa every year, and this time it's happening in November this year. So the official poster of IFFI will also be unveiled at the Bharat Parv that is going to be hosted by India at the Cannes Film Festival. Remember, India was the honor country in the Cannes last edition. And of course, All We Imagine as Light is one of the films that is competing for the prestigious Palme d'Or at the Cannes. So that's it in this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live. And for those on the go, you can also download our DD India mobile app. So we will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.